What is up, you guys? I hope you're doing well. We're here for our weekend reflection message. So on Friday nights, our video, or I don't know when you guys see them, but when I record them, it's Friday nights. It's usually like the culmination of the understanding that we've gleaned over like the lessons and the process that have been playing out through the week. So today is no different. It is really just like a culmination and embodiment of all the lessons that all of our readings have really been pointing at this week, which is how to navigate a test without feeling like you failed when you're still in the midst of it, right? And also how to recover from a disagreement, how to repair from that, how to move forward, how not to stew in it. And, you know, be trying to walk a fine line and a balance between being authentic and in your truth, and also knowing when it's better to just have peace, like when peace is better than being right or being understood. And also discerning between the tikkun elam, which is whatever your tikkun correction is. And sometimes it changes and it varies upon the specific situation, right? So sometimes where, you know, for some, they're very confrontational and it's too easy to speak up because they want to be heard and they want to be respected and they want people to see it their way. And they don't care, you know, about the backlash, right? And so in that person's case, when they're always the one that's going to say something, more than likely their correction, their assignment is to practice more restraint and hold back a little bit and ask themselves what kind of a consciousness they're in before they speak, before they say anything. Are they trying to give and build, or are they trying to take energy in that situation or validate themselves or destroy in some way? What's the real seed level of consciousness? Now, for some, though, the thought of confrontation gets them queasy because they don't want to hurt the person's feelings and they don't want their feelings to be hurt by the possible backlash or consequences of having the conversation. And so in this case, sometimes people don't have the resources to have the conversations in a way that is really mindful and graceful. Sometimes their, emotions get the better of them and they get flustered and they don't have the resources or the tools to articulate their point of view and their feelings without blaming the other person, or there's a way to present your feelings without it being a projection or an attack or a blame game. And those are skills that take work, and many times also a coach or a therapist to teach you and help you work those skills and embody them, right? So we're not just all skilled and trained to have these conversations. So we do the best we can. And so if you find that you're avoiding conversations and hiding out and not wanting to rock the boat, well, then that is a thing that needs to be worked on as well, because then it builds up and it leads to resentment. And then, you want to express yourself in some form or fashion. So it might start to come out in ways that are passive aggressive, or it might come out in ways where your body is telling you truths that you're not speaking, right? In the form of ailments and illnesses and pains and aches. So we've been learning this week how to discern and, how to navigate rocky patches in relationships, or if we have hit a stumbling block in a goal, how to become resilient and bounce back and move forward and learn from it. And also, too, I think we've been learning to have a greater threshold for sitting in the discomfort, because it's easier to, when you feel cringe for yourself about something you've done or said, you're like, oh God, I don't want to think about that ever again. I just want to like avoid it, numb it out, black it out, do whatever I can to distract myself from being alone with those thoughts where I feel bad about my actions and I don't want to go back and replay them. But the thing is, the best thing we can do for ourselves is to sit with those thoughts and go back and replay them and be in the discomfort and really examine the pain and the suffering that we caused in ourselves in a reactive moment, but also into the situation, into the other. Maybe it caused a domino effect of negative results, right? So instead of brushing it off and bypassing and overstepping and moving forward and sweeping it under the rug, moving forward before you've processed, it's really valuable to feel the pain and feel go in with consciousness and intention to feel that sorrow, not only to process it for yourself, but also so that you feel the weight and consequences of that reactive behavior. And you realize the next time you're like, ooh, this is going to feel worse than it's going to feel good, so there's no reason in doing it anymore, right? So it's kind of like compared to when you are young, dumb, and full of cum and going out and getting drunk and hammered. Sounds like a fun idea, and it sounds like you're going to have the best night of your life. And many times it is, like when you're young and you have energy to like bounce back from the hangovers. But then once you get to an age where like the hangover catches up with you and it takes days to recover, and which happened to me pretty early on, lucky enough, like 22, that you just don't want to get that hammered anymore. And it's not worth it, right? That night of fun where you took all the shots so you'd be like, off the chain and no inhibitions, right? Oh, so fun at the time, but like the next day, horrible hangovers, possibly regrets, remorse, irreparable damage, you don't know, right? So as we get older, we're like, oh, the payoff is not worth the cost. So we realize that the behavior just doesn't have appeal anymore. We lose our taste for it, right? So, the more that we notice the discomfort that something is causing us and really looking around and going, wow, it doesn't really give me any benefits to have that consciousness, and then to feel that way, and then to follow through with thoughts and words that created damage, you think differently, you think better of it next time beforehand. So it helps us become more aware. So we can actually, take advantage and appreciate our mistakes. We can't go out and make them on purpose. It doesn't work that way. But if we found ourselves, already having made the mistake, if we can embrace the moment to really suck the marrow out of the learning experience and really go in deep with it and get into the meat and the potatoes, then it can really be a catalyst for greater change than had you just, never made the mistake in the beginning and to begin with, right? So we are learning how to navigate once we've made the mistake, not to fall into the pits of despair, self-loathing, and more reactive behavior due to guilt and all of that and shame. But what instead we, use that fall to fall L up. We take the L. Our L is angled at 90 degrees. If we fall down, it's going to take us straight up, right? Because we're going to learn from our mistakes. All right, so our cards for the weekend from the Radiant Sun Oracle, which I love this deck. This is, I think, I would recommend it as having it as a go-to standard in your collection. It's really great, and it's like an oracle deck based on astrological placements that really cover the span of human experience, if you ask me. So another great set of cards. Okay, so our first card is eccentricity. This is Saturn in Aquarius. followed by empathy, which is the moon in Pisces, followed by bluff, which is Jupiter in Gemini. Underneath eccentricity, we have justice. Underneath empathy, we have Ace of Cups. And underneath bluff, we have Four of Pentacles. Okay, so I'm going to pause this here and let you guys listen to like a 2-minute audio of our spread and the blog that I wrote. And then we're going to come back and talk more about the cards. And I'm going to tell you guys what is so wild, but also not surprising, because that's how magic and miracles work. But my Kabbalah class last night that I watched, which is a replay of whatever recent class that I had missed, I watched it last night, and of course it was aligned with exactly the, experiences that I've been going through this week, obviously, because that's how God designs things. And so it's perfect too for our reading. It was literally like rabbinical commentary on our cards today. So we're going to come back and talk about that too. So stick around. We're learning slowly but surely how to, in a healthy way, practice restriction, tolerance, and acceptance of each individual's own uniqueness, their understanding, their needs, experiences, and points of view. It is impossible for the fullness of the light to be revealed without disagreement and differing opinions and points of view, as we learn from Rav Ashlag. It is in these arguments that new and deeper truths and wisdom are revealed, that true change, revelation, and healing are made possible. However, we have to walk a tightrope of speaking truth with integrity, and also the other to feel safe to also have their point of view as well. Sometimes the hardest thing to do is let go and trust the Creator with their process and just listen. Listening with empathy and an open heart opens the gates of healing and understanding. You don't have to agree with a person, but you don't have to argue with them either. You can just listen, as my teacher Bataya Solomon taught in last night's Kabbalah class, which is always exactly aligned with whatever I'm facing at that week. Sometimes just being heard and witnessed is the very thing that soul needs to also see themselves more clearly, which begins the transformation. And in that exchange, we also see ourselves more clearly, and a new level of transformation and awareness is birthed within us as well. Okay, here we are, we're back. All right, so the eccentricity card here with the justice card. This is like respecting people's individuality whilst still respecting your own individuality, right? Each of us are unique, and each of us have a unique expression of the light to bring into the world. We all have our own unique experiences and perspectives, and we all have our own process of awakening to go through. And so it can be very hard not to want to help people along when you see people that you care about, like you want to help them in their process the way that you've been in yours. But sometimes we can't, we have to be careful about not getting into their stuff, because we have to trust the Creator to take them through their own process, and we can't make it so that people don't feel safe to be who they are or their authentic self, or have their own point of view. And so we're in a really extreme moment right now in time where there are some very destructive and dangerous point of views out there in world leadership. And the rest of us, and those points of view are being seeded into the population to see division and separation amongst us. And so the challenge then becomes all of us people here together in the world that are not seated in positions of power with billions of dollars at our disposal. We're having to navigate alongside one another, and the viewpoints are pretty starkly in opposition in many cases. And so the challenge then becomes, how do we practice both tolerance and an allowance for the difference of opinions to come forward, whilst also having not tolerating cruelty and destruction, right? How do we show up with authentic integrity and also allow others to feel safe in the space? Because what happens if others have a differing point of view and they don't feel safe to express it, they're not going to reveal their true self in front of the person, or they won't open themselves up to higher consciousness because they're going to be in defensiveness and they're going to be off put, right? So it's how do we navigate these things? Well, the teachings of Rav Ashlag from the book Wisdom of Truth, I think was the name of the book, goes into this exactly. And it is, how do we maintain unity within disagreements, right? Well, how do we honor people's uniqueness and keep things just and fair and balanced, right? So we'll go more into that. The next card is empathy and Ace of Cups. So what is needed right now is a more patience and more self-control, more self-mastery, to have the self-control to be able to listen with empathy, even to people that you find you disagree with the most, and it's the hardest to sit there and listen to them with empathy. Let that be step one. And because this is going to make it possible for a new emotional renewal, a change of heart, right? A change of consciousness, a change of perspective. And this is what can start helping the healing process start to happen, right? Sometimes when someone gets out their feelings and they feel like their fears or struggles have been recognized and seen, they feel like their experience has been witnessed and understood, then it takes a lot of the edge off and a lot of the defensiveness, because a lot of the times people are just fighting for their dignity, fighting to be seen, fighting to be recognized and validated. And then once they feel that they have been, they can kind of a lot of times move on and release that level of consciousness and move forward into another. But if we keep tit for tatting and we're not sensitive enough when we bring up our opposing points of view, then it can cause people to go on the defense or shut down or run away or reject or repudiate or go deeper down into, holding on to the point of view that they're in, right? Whether or not it's, and holding on for any of us to our point of view without allowing for evolution keeps us stuck, right? So the best we can do is start to practice more patience and listening to build trust, to build repair, to build resilience, and to help people start to let their guard down, right? Because God will be revealed, right? there is so much horror that has gone on this year, but that darkness has allowed the truth of what's been festering to be revealed and seen once and for all for what it truly is. And so that way we can say yay or nay. And we can say, you know what, we see now what needs to be repaired and what needs to be adjusted, and it's no longer going to be hiding in the shadows or festering. We're going to take care of this once and for all. We're going to transform. We're going to choose differently. And so already we've seen through this week's elections that people have woken up and they are putting boots to the pavement, and they're taking action to use their voices and their choices and their actions to make for a better future, for a better tomorrow, for a better sense of unity. And the United States came together in an attitude of unity, of sharing, right? By voting for all of these Democratic seats. It may not be that the Democratic Party is ideal, but a united force of us came together to say, no, we need to vote for the sake of sharing. We need to vote for the sake of taking care of one another, right? And it will hopefully get more evolved in the nuances as we go forward. Now, there was exciting new, advances and, revolutionary, I think, innovation, like with the Working Families Party starting to be birthed forward, with people who are really focused on affordability and making life livable for the average person. Again, and so Zoran Mamdani and many others, but he is the prime example in the spotlight of the person who archetypally was able to do that in the biggest way, in the epicenter of greed, money, and capitalism on earth, right? He was able to get a community agenda to be the thing that people rallied around, right? And so I think that some really amazing things are going to start happening, hopefully in New York, and hopefully they can set the stage for more of this to come. I was just seeing a video about those city-owned grocery stores that they've been experimenting with them in Atlanta, and they've been really honing in and making them customized to the local community and how they want to be served and represented. So I think that that's really cool. I'm not sure if the groceries there are free or severely marked down to very low so that people are, they're able to afford food. But either way, it's an effort to make food affordable for people. So that's great, right? All right, and so then we have Bluff here, and we have Four of Pentacles. Now, this, I think, represents the fact that as we get into conversations with people about issues that are hot button issues and things where people might butt heads, or things where people start to get defensive and kind of worked up, triggered, it's important that we are able to maintain our groundedness and our self-control without silencing ourselves. Remember when we were talking about recently the difference between repression and restriction. So repression is just stuffing it down and getting along anyway and just doing the thing and then resenting it and but it's like that stuffing down and making yourself just do it kind of thing. Whereas restriction it's a pause rather than a stuffing down, and it's a pause where we take a moment to sincerely try to reconsider. We invite God to help us have a different perspective, in the way that we're looking at the situation, and we're praying that God and the Christ will help us to have a change of heart about the situation. So we're trying to see, okay, well, this is an opportunity. Why is this happening? Why is this playing out the way it is? Why has this been designed to be in my simulation, for my learning experience? And so what can I do with this? How can I make the most of this moment to use it for transformation and for growth? So sometimes we might have to not bluff, as in put on a mask, but just not show all of our passion, right? Maybe we need to rein it in a bit and fake it till we make it, until we're naturally more graceful and tolerant, and we're more comfortable with confrontation. And I think the more comfortable you become with confrontation, you get to where you can communicate your truth in a respectful, loving way, even though it might be in disagreement. But you can have emotional groundedness when you do it, and you are prepared and willing to receive the backlash that might come from it. And you're not going to let it destroy you, but you're going to be hardy and resilient and accept that that might be a consequence that comes with speaking an important truth. But you've evaluated at that point that it's something that's worth saying and needs to be said, right? So we find more muscles in navigating those uncomfortable conversations. But then we also can know, okay, which hills are we dying on? Is this a good timing to do this? Is this person going to be receptive even? So there's some criteria you have to check off before you have a confrontation. It's spiritually proactive confrontation, right? So you check your motives, you check your own consciousness. Why am I bringing this up? Where am I coming from in this? Is this about me? Am I taking energy here? Or is this about sharing? Is this about building someone up, or is this about tearing something down? And so is it about revealing light, or is it about perpetuating negativity or darkness, right? And so we ask ourselves that first. Then we ask, is this proper timing? Is this fruitful timing to do this in, right? Is this a poor choice of moment? And okay, so if the timing is checking out, is the person even going to be open enough to hear this? Can they receive it? Are they going to be receptive at all? And if not, then it's probably just going to be more of a liability to bring it up, because it's not going to go anywhere productive, right? So we need to ask these things. And then we also need to ask, do I have permission from the Creator to bring this up? Is this something that I am being asked to bring this up? Or is this a situation where I need to trust the Creator to take them through their own process and take a step back and let them deal with it? Okay. And learn from people's, sometimes it's like, we have to discern whether or not this is a moment where we're being asked to contribute, in teaching what we've learned, or is this a moment where we have to accept that sometimes people have to learn from their own mistakes? So this passage is from a book called The Wisdom of Truth. It's by Rav Ashlag, and he is a Kabbalist teacher, and this is basically a discussion on the value of disagreement, but also maintaining unity within that. So we should add to the aforementioned that reality places before us a total contradiction between material things and matters of opinion and ideas concerning this subject. Since societal unity, which can be the source of all happiness and success, only applies to material and bodily things and people, the disunity between them is the source of all trouble and evil occurrences. However, in matters of opinion and thoughts, which is the polar opposite, because unity and lack of criticism are the source of all failure and get in the way of all advancement and intellectual fertility. The drawing of correct conclusions is based on argument, and difference is based on multiplicity of opinion. The more opposition, contradiction, and criticism there is, the more wisdom and understanding can proliferate, and things become clearer and easier to understand. All failure and degeneration of understanding comes as a result of insufficient criticism and argument. So basically, this passage is talking about first that that when it comes to like people's happiness and prosperity as a whole, as a society, we tend to be abundant and blessed and feel prosperous when people are unified and they've come together, and we have general peace amongst us, and everyone is happy that the other one is taken care of and succeeding, and we're in general agreement, right? We're in general unity. We're all on the same page. And so since societal unity, which can be the source of all happiness and success, only applies to material and bodily things. Like imagine we lived in a utopia, right? We were all totally at peace, and we were united, and everybody had universal everything taken care of, right? All of our needs were met, and all of our basic needs, our education was taken care of. And I mean, like, that's a utopia, right? Think about how happy and thriving people would be. They could, give themselves fully to their passions and their dreams, and they would be fulfilled in their work, and they would, we would be generally joyous because things would be taken care of, and there wouldn't be all the stress and discord, right? So in that sense, like when we have unity, we are blessed. And when we have unity and come together and ask the Creator for something, and we are in a spirit of unity and we are united in our request, it can't be denied. Like nothing is more powerful than when two or more people are gathered and in love and in unity. It is a very powerful, powerful force. However, when we are in separation, that is the opposite. It like cuts off that blessing, and it creates discord and misery and suffering, and it takes away from the abundance. So they're saying though that there's a point to where maintaining unity at the cost of disagreement is toxic, right? So there's a point where, however, in matters of opinion and thought, this is the polar opposite, because unity and lack of criticism are the source of all failure. So think about it. When everybody just goes along with someone who's, say, drunk on power, and they remain unchecked, then that's how tyrants take over and start acting unjustly, right? So when movie stars are like, or people in Hollywood, when they're getting everything, like when people are waiting on them hand and foot, and they're getting everything they want, and everybody just goes along with what they say because they're rich and they're popular and they're powerful. And they're like, oh yeah, and you just get sucked up to, right? There gets to be this like decay in their character and in their personality, and like they become really unattractive, and it's just like, but they become like these that's when these people become like super egotistical, and they start on this path of self-destruction because they're going completely unchecked, right? People are just reinforcing their madness and their selfishness and their vanity and their arrogance. So no one's checking them, so they're not growing. If science wasn't, so a scientist, a serious scientist, has to go into their research and their study, understanding that they're looking for ways they could be wrong, and they're knowing that they don't know everything, and they have enough knowledge to have the confidence to navigate and search for more, but they have the humility to not take it personally if they're wrong for the sake of advancement, right? So it's saying that if society, or if a situation, or if a relationship doesn't allow for people to both bring forward their opinions like for instance, a company that has a lot of people working for it and a lot of different divisions and a lot of different departments, they need to be able to get feedback from those different departments so that they can come up with systems and practices that work and that will be adopted and embraced by people and that will function in the company. And so they need people to speak up about what's working, what's not, what's functional, what isn't, what's efficient, what's not. And so if it's just like this leader that doesn't want to hear from anyone and they just want to implement their own ideas, then they might get their own ideas met, but it might not make for the most functional company. And in the meantime, all the other people are going to feel like their voices aren't heard. So then they're going to feel kind of like disempowered and passive aggressive, and they might reject the policies and they're not going to go along with it, right? But if you allow everybody to have their say, you hear everybody's difference of opinions, even in arguments. Like for instance, the rabbis in the Talmud, they are meeting every day to argue Torah, to get to the right interpretations and to get to deeper insight and deeper truths. And if they just let one guy say what it meant one time and they just kept repeating that in an echo chamber, it wouldn't be a living word. There would not be greater depths of understanding and new consciousness and greater consciousness. It would just be this still stagnant thing that just never progressed. So, it's good to bring forth like your varying points of view, but you can do it in such a way that you allow others to feel safe in bringing forth their points of view, even if you don't agree with it. But it's safe for them to have their own uniqueness and their own voice. You don't have to agree, but you also don't necessarily have to, you don't have to be disrespectful. You don't have to get into nasty arguments and finger pointing. You can have a constructive conversation with disagreements, but also in a respectful manner, doing your best to come from a loving place. So this woman, so my teacher Bataya Solomon was discussing these passages in class and like breaking it down. And one of the students had a question that came on camera because she said that she has, there was one person who brought up political differences, right? And so, and the news sources and what to believe and what not to believe. And so Bataya was like, made the point that that it's not that person's responsibility to have to change everyone, that the creator, like people can learn from their own mistakes, and we have to like allow space for the creator to do that and trust that the creator brought us through that process and that he can do that with others. Building on that, a woman was talking about how she used to have a very victim-minded mindset and feel like the world was being, was putting upon her, and she was suffering in unfair ways. And so now she's like, I have been in Kabbalah class and learned to have a different consciousness and to think otherwise. But now because of me, my son is like that. And so she's like, often butts heads with her son because she is trying to offer him this other point of view. So Bataya again was like, you have to trust the creator to take him through his own process, but you don't necessarily have to argue with your son. You can just listen. Like sometimes that's what's really needed more than anything by that person on the other side, is just to have someone to bear witness for them to get it off their chest and to feel safe to do that. And so then that starts to prepare the ground for them to have their own spiritual awakening. And so she was like, yeah, it's just so hard because I want to help him and I feel responsible. And so Bataya was like, you can sit and listen and disagree, but not argue. Right? You don't have to sit there. You don't have to say anything. You can just listen. You don't have to agree or pretend you agree or pretend that you are placating this point of view, but at the same time, you can sit there, you can bear witness, you can listen without agreeing. And she's like, I can just listen, right? Because sometimes it's so hard to do that, especially with the people we're closest to, when they're going through something and you think, oh, if I could just get them to understand it the way that I do, they wouldn't suffer. And that's where you're coming from, but they are not receiving it that way. And so sometimes the best we can do, the least destructive thing we can do is, yes, maybe we disagree, but we can sit silently and listen and bear witness. And it's not always our responsibility to be the savior, to be the teacher or whatever. We can, if they want our input, they can ask for it, right? So then there was another bit of... So we see that when mankind attains its goal in terms of physical success, which is the complete attainment of the level of love of others, then all the bodies of everyone in the world will unite as one and one heart, as explained in the article on peace. For only then will all of the hoped for happiness of mankind be revealed. Therefore, on the other hand, we must be careful not to let the opinions of mankind become so similar that argument and criticism of the wise and scholars disappear. Since physical love naturally causes similarity of opinion, and if argument and criticism disappear, all ideas and intellectual advancement will cease, and the source of wisdom will, as we understand, dry up from the world. So this is saying, like, look, there's a very important place for disagreement and differences of opinion here, because if we're all, because what we want ultimately is to all unify as one heart, mind, and body, and we want everyone to be taken care of. We want everybody to be happy and fulfilled and get out all that they want, but at the same time, not at the cost of just going along with the same opinion and everybody thinking the same thing and losing our uniqueness. We need that friction and the opposites, and we need the difference of points of view and opinion to be expressed so that we can continue to reveal more light and more depth and more meaning, right? But we can't do that if we feel like, okay, now that we've gotten peace on earth, we have to everybody has to think the same and agree, and everybody be in total agreement and an echo chamber all the time, because that's where we stagnate and we don't grow and we don't evolve. We need people to push back a little bit so that we can see ourselves more clearly, and so that they can see themselves more clearly. And so through that revelation, we can, have the ability to heal and to change and to move forward, and also to come to the deeper truths and meanings of things, like in Torah or in science or in, politics, right? What can we do to improve society for everyone, right? We wouldn't get there if we just let one side do whatever they wanted and go totally unchecked, right? We've seen what happens when that happens, right? So, but at the same time, we have to learn how to speak up in a healthy, loving way that allows for everyone's point of view to be heard, but you don't stifle and silence yourself either, right? All right, that is all for tonight. We will be back together tomorrow night for Secret Teachings of Jesus, where we will get back on our regularly scheduled programming. I was on hiatus last week for Halloween, but we're in the Gospel of Mary. We're getting into the meat of it, so that's been really fun. But yeah, join in tomorrow. And then you guys, right now, I'm going to go film some things for the 2026 prediction series. So yay, that'll be coming soon. All right, peace.